We've got a guy who fashions himself as the Jerry Maguire of real estate and star of HGTV's Scoring the Deal. 12-year experience, offices in Phoenix, Detroit, McLean, Virginia. Jason Abrams, concierge-like real estate services, the clients of the stars, and a former office manager of a 100-plus agent office. The guy combines real estate, money management, agency, and I'm sure he's got some wonderful stories to tell us as well. He describes himself in the press release as a dedicated 24/7 working machine. I got to talk to this working machine. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks for asking. How are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderfully. So give us the best 30-second elevator speech about the business and the Scoring the Deal program.
Well, we represent athletes and entertainers as they buy, sell, and rent real estate around the country. And that's really all that we do. We just happen to do it better than everybody else. So we like to think that we're the last face an athlete sees when he leaves town, and we're the first face he sees when he gets to the next one.
Well, and the good thing about that, by the way, obviously, is that you perform a service if it means sound investments and sound flipping and sound buying and selling. You use the examples of all of these guys that don't make their money or don't keep the money that they make. How much of your work and success is, let's say, good real estate investment? How much of it is good advice as far as how much you can spend and how much you save? Is it a combination of a little bit of both, or is it more than that?
Well, yeah, I think it's a combination. I'd like to think that the financial advisors that these gentlemen are hiring are creating the budgets and giving us the parameters to work in. And when it comes to real estate investing, to be candid with you, we really discourage it amongst our athletic clients. We kind of think that you're never going to make as much money investing in real estate as you're going to make playing and handling your craft. Because let's face it, right? If you're in one of the major leagues, you're the best in the world at what you do. We'd rather see you play out your career, save as much money as you can, and then when you retire, then maybe you look to do a little real estate investing. Finish the game and then figure out what chips you have before you figure out what you're going to do. And as far as buying residential real estate, we really don't look at it as much of an investment because you never go home and cuddle up with your stock and bond portfolio. You do, however, go home to your house, especially when you're playing far away from home. It's got to be somewhere that you feel comfortable. That said, we tell everybody, whether it's the first pick in the draft or an undrafted guy, that your first year in any league, you should just be renting. You should be renting a furnished place and bringing a suitcase and a playbook and concentrating on making it in this league, not concentrating on buying houses.
That's too good to be true advice, by the way, and great advice. And you realize that the first 5 guys in the draft that just happened in Brooklyn, they get a $10 million or more contract over 3 years. The next set get $2.5 million over 3 years, and you tell them that they should be renting and focusing on their sport, and they look at you saying, look, I have the money, I've got the cash, I'm getting the cash. If I want 14 Porsches and 27 bedrooms, you're not going to stop me. What do you say to that?
I say that I'm sure there's a lot of realtors out there that represent you. Unfortunately, it won't be me. Because the reality of it is we're lucky enough at this point in our career to have kids that we took from the dorm room to the first rental, into a modest house, and then at the end of the career into a dream house. And by the way, that's all it should be. There shouldn't be 7 or 8 vacation homes along the way. We should be collecting dollars, not deeds. And if you don't like the way that we do business, and I get that, then you're going to have to deal with someone else. Because the reason that we do this, it's not just because you can't afford to do it. Just because you can afford to do something doesn't make it the right thing to do. It's because at 20, 19, 21, do you really need to go from a small place into a mega mansion and deal with the decisions that go into furnishing it and then deal with the maintenance costs of carrying it? Most people, regular people that are listening today, maybe they come out of school and they go into a rental. And that's a function of saving enough money for a down payment. But what it does is it gives you time to mature as a person, to figure out what it is that you like in a house, who you are and how you want to live. If you skip that step and just go into buying things, you end up making terrible mistakes. And these mistakes are expensive ones.
All right, here's the fun part. Give me the craziest pro athlete stories you have.
I mean, I'll tell you this, that I would venture to guess that there's no realtor in the country that has sold as many homes with exotic dancing poles in them as I have, because that's a regular occurrence in my world.
Wow, exotic dancing poles. Now, and now you whet our appetite, so you're only half done with this story. Keep going.
Well, I can tell you that, we're fortunate enough to become somewhat friendly with our clients. And we've had instances where we've had a whole lot of fun in someone's house before being charged to sell it. There's nothing like walking through a home with a regular family after an athlete is moving out and explaining why having a stripper pole and black leather wallpaper and maybe a hot pink bathroom is okay thing to have. I get a kick out of it every time.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're pretty darn good at explaining it, and that's why the show is probably a must-watch show. When's it on, by the way?
We're in the middle of filming the second season. We're winding up now. We're actually shooting tonight in Los Angeles. We don't have an air date for the second season yet, but we had a really successful first season, and people tuned in and watched Clinton Portis and Vernon Davis and Bonte Davis and Jordan Farmar and Grievous Vasquez. And in the second season, we have a whole rack of guys that I think people are really going to like to watch all around the country.
The resale part of this, too, is there kind of an unspoken premium for the next normal run-of-the-mill family who buys a house that one of these superstars has occupied? Is it, at the end of the day, worth more on the resale?
No, I think it's a common misconception. I think that people know that they're buying a home from an athlete, especially if one got traded, and they're fairly confident that that's the time to beat somebody up. Because let's face it, 9 times out of 10, if you leave a city, you're not coming back to it. And it's not just me that knows that, it's all the buyers as well. Yeah,
interesting comment. Give me the idea of the buying and selling, your pretty good idea of buying and selling trophy properties. That's in essence what you do, at least in this context. Tell me whether there are some similarities or differences as you deal with the owners of pro sports franchises, who, after all, are buying and selling trophy properties as well.
I think that the owners of pro sports teams that are buying these things are buying different types of trophy properties. I mean, let's be honest, it's on a whole different level. The guys that get paychecks are making a lot of money, but the guys that write them have an awful lot more. The two necessarily aren't comparable. You also have to keep in mind that the trophy properties that a 22-year-old are looking at is awfully different than what you're looking at 30 years old. I mean, take the average guy who's out listening tonight. Think about how much different and more sophisticated you are now at, say, 33 than you were at, say, 23. I think that the things you want change. What doesn't change, though, in my experience with professional athletes, is they always want something, quote, that no one else has. It's got to have some wow factor, and it's got to have something different. The kind of ego that you need to become the best in the world at something goes into everything that they do, and I think it goes into their homes as well. You can see a lot of these guys when you walk through their properties.
On balance, you're walking through these properties, and you realize that they need something unique. Are most of the guys you deal with happy with just buying someone else's house and living in it, or do most of these guys want substantial reworking of the property after they buy it, or do they end up building from the ground up?
I think that the first house you walk into, you're fairly happy with the way that it is because it's so much nicer than anything you've seen and anything that you grew up being involved in. After you get a taste of the league, and that's every one of these leagues, and you see what other guys have, you start to formulate your own ideas. By that second or third house, I think they're usually doing dramatic renovations, and I really tell everybody, don't build a house until you're done playing and you're building your dream house, because you may choose to do that in a city that has less confiscatory tax consequences than in another one. Like, you might love playing in New York, but retiring there might not make the most sense. Florida is calling.
Yeah, Florida's calling. I'm in Florida, and I'm very happy at the income tax bill stage that I don't get as far as the state's concerned, and I know you deal with a lot of clients in the same context here. What happens, by the way, at the front end, and there's a existing seller that wants to sell to an athlete or wants to sell to anybody, and you're bringing an athlete to that person, does the leverage cut both ways there as well? You'd think that he'd want to sell to a superstar and be excited about it. On the other hand, he thinks that athlete has all the money in the world and is more reluctant to offer him a discount. How does that cut?
Yeah, you know what? I think that at least for most of our clients that are buying multi-million-dollar houses, they're buying it from someone who could afford to buy a multi-million-dollar house. And at the end of it, it becomes a business deal on both sides of the transaction. And I think as a general rule in life, I think it's rare that you get a great deal on something. It's rare that you get completely ripped off on something. It's like all of us. We usually end up paying what something is worth. 1 minute,
Jerry Maguire of Real Estate, Jason Abrams. Last question. The economy, cyclical, looks like it's improving. Everybody seems to think so. What's your prediction of where this market goes in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think that you can look at individual markets that are always going to be outliers, But I happen to think that there's going to be an influx of foreclosures that are coming onto the market. I think that there's been an artificial holdback by the government, and if you're looking at houses for less than $1 million, I think there's going to be an influx of inventory. I would tell anyone out there, contact the local real estate agent, needless to say, but I would sit on the sidelines on this one. I'm not ready to jump in the game.
Wow, he talks about athletes, he gives us some stories, he gives us some real estate investment, all in a 10-minute period. Jason Abrams, love to have you back if you wouldn't mind.
Love to come back. Thanks so much.